Good morning and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Sean McEwen and I'm the publisher of Inside Aging. And this is the first session we're doing that has I suppose a new format where we're bringing together both Future of Aging Award winners and highly commended companies and organisations, along with clients that are currently using their solutions. So it's very unique to be able to give the industry and our audience in particular 2 points of view, both the supplier and obviously the end user. So I think what we've got today will be quite interesting. So maybe just to start with, before I introduce everybody, I'll just provide our audience just a little bit of background to the awards themselves. They're now in their 4th year, and we think we've got a pretty robust judging process to try to find solutions that are designed to help aged care providers to do their jobs better, essentially. And that's in many cases technology, it's practices, it's innovation, it's products, it's training, it's a whole lot of things that come together to help do that. And with our judges, and you might have seen in some of the stories we've carried, we have 5 judges, so we have quite a range of people with diverse backgrounds. And we have a couple of, well, 4 criteria in particular that the judges need to rate and ultimately rank the entries against. And they are leadership and innovation, collaboration and engagement, evidence of success. So the product or service has to be employed in the context of aged care. Even if it's a pilot, that's okay. It just needs to be evidenced through being used somewhere. And it needs to be scalable and sustainable. So again, if it's being used, it needs to have the potential of being rolled out to multiple locations. So we're not, with these awards, we're not looking for blue sky thinking of things that are possible maybe one day. It has to be something that's available today, is being used, and has the potential to scale across multiple locations throughout Australia. So that criteria, if you like, is what the judges are given, and they rank each of the entries 1 to 5 against each of that criteria, 5 being a high score and 1 being the lowest score, and then we tally those up. So we've got 5 different judges, we've got 4 different criteria, and we've got a scoring system from 1 to 5. So you can imagine you get a fairly robust, or at least we think it's a fairly robust judging mechanism. So the people you're seeing today have gone through that, and they are very much true leaders in what they're doing, because that diversity of judging, but also the robust framework, I think works well. So to introduce the presenters today, we've got James Stack from Obvious Choice with Lil Ryan from Anglicare, South Australia. And their solution was the 2021 winner of the People and Culture category. So welcome to you, James and Lil.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
We've also got Emma Allen from Simple and Danny Turner from Harbison Care on the Southern Highlands in New South Wales. And the Simple food management software was the winner of the 2021 Business Technology category. So welcome, Danny, and welcome, Emma.
Thank you.
Sean.
Great. Also joining us is Joash Belousov, and Joash is from Navigi, and Navigi's a digital agency who's been partnering with us with these awards for the last 2 years, and they have been very important in supporting this initiative, especially given that they work with aged care providers to help bring these solutions together through a digital ecosystem, and generally working to make sure things work in harmony. So Joash will be on hand during the Q&A to answer any broader questions about digital. But I'll let you, Joash, just provide a very quick intro to what you've got to offer as well.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. Yeah, so I mean, really, the genesis of Novigi, we both Ash and I, who started Novigi, we worked in sort of financial services, big corporate technology consulting and implementation. And 6 or 7 years ago, kind of wanted out of that. We wanted to do something sort of more values led. And so we went out of that, and we had a bit of leave and thought about what we do. And we wanted to take some of the things that big corporate were doing and apply it to organizations that were actually facilitating and implementing significant change and really helping people. We had some contacts in aged care. So we started working there and felt that that was a really good spot to be able to be more values-led in what we were doing and actually implement change through technology that improved the quality of life for people. And so we've lent heavily into that. Really what we do in aged care, we do sort of target operating models, strategy consulting from a tech perspective. What should my blueprint architecture look like? How do I integrate my systems? What's the best way of doing that? And then we help actually implement on the integration and data side. That's really what Novigi does, and we're really keen and thankful for the partnership with Future of Aging and Sean to help bring about, using tech to bring about change for good in the industry, and keen to be around and answer any questions and help participate on the conversation, the broader ecosystem, and on how all these things can fit together and work together in that environment.
Great, thanks, Joash. And just a reminder to everybody who's on the call today, the Q&A will be at the end. So the format will be, we'll have a presentation from Obvious Choice, followed by Simple. And after those two presentations, there'll be a Q&A where you'll be able to ask questions of the presenters and their clients. And we've had a few questions that have been logged already. So thank you for everybody that's put their questions forward. We'll be reading those out during the Q&A. And you'll notice at the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A box. You'll be able to type in your question throughout the course of the webinar, and we'll pick those up in the Q&A. So feel free, if there's a question about something's worked, how something has worked in the context of aged care, and you want first-hand advice, just type in the question. Okay, so over to you, James. I'll let you take it from here. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Sean. So how Lil and my session is going to work is Lil is going to talk to the background and the context of why Anglicare SA decided to deliver dementia care training using a micro-learning app. And then I'll talk to how the learner experience actually works. So
fantastic.
Over to you, Lil.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. I'm Lil and I'm from Anglicare SA. So Anglicare SA adopted a micro-learning model. And our goal was to improve care outcomes for residents living with dementia and making training more accessible for our frontline staff. So the background on how we got here was that we took feedback from our 2020 employee engagement survey, and we asked our workforce what they would like more training on. And the PCWs requested more training in the area of dementia. So prior to 2021, dementia training was provided as an e-learning module as part of our annual professional development program for aged care. But we wanted to look at a way to break down the standard barriers that we come across with training in the aged care space. Some of those were administrative challenges, giving people time to do training, as well as rostering, and then we had to backfill those staff, those positions as well. So we wanted to see whether we could combat that. And I guess we also wanted to advance people's skills on how to deal with real life situations and increase confidence with technology, which has been a constant obstacle for us in the aged care space. How we implemented this, our change in communication plan consisted of video messaging from our General Manager of Aged Care Services. We put in posters, balloons, lolly stations at each of the aged care facilities prior to the first date and the launch date, sorry, and you can see the poster there on the side. And then my team, I run the team of people business partners, and we ran information sessions to participants on how to log in, how to become familiar with how the app worked, and we're trying to overcome some of those preconceived fears of technology devices as well. So when it comes to our outcomes, we didn't make this training mandatory. It was optional, but it was highly recommended and it was highly advertised throughout our aged care facilities as well. So out of the 700 people that we have working in residential aged care, we have 450 people take up this app. Considering the challenges we have with staff doing any kind of training, whether it's mandatory or not, this campaign was considered highly successful. And I guess achieving this was a combination of how easy the app was to use, the implementation plan we put in place to ensure staff knew about it, and we were also really visual on site, and we helped with any issues, problems or questions. And then you've got a little chart there that 87.5% of people that we surveyed said that it was better to learn in a few minutes a day with bursts of learning instead of doing a 30 to 60-minute e-learning module. So, of course, there's highlights and challenges. I'll go through the highlights first. Highlights was the number of staff that we found took up the training on the app, which was great. Staff could do this in their own time because it's 5-minute bursts of learning whenever they were ready. So some people did it in their breaks, some people did it at home, some people did it in the bus on the way to work or home from work. We didn't necessarily have to worry about backfilling people to do this training because it's only 5 minutes a day. And our staff were the subject matter experts. They designed the content, so it was based on real life situations that happen in our aged care facilities. It was a progressive way of learning, and staff are still applying the techniques now to the residents. But of course, there are challenges when we do things like this. The challenges where staff did have to download the app onto their own personal devices. We have a cohort of staff that are really fearful of technology, so that was something we had to overcome. It took time out of BAU for my team to run through the campaign and promote it out on sites. And we also were rolling this out through restrictions with COVID. That's it. Over to you, James. That's my part.
Thanks very much, Lil.
Okay.
That was excellent. I think just to pick up on a few things that Lil just highlighted in the last few slides was Anglicare SA replaced a once and done approach with an e-learning module to build dementia care knowledge with the actual continuous 5 minutes a day for 4 to 6 weeks to really give people the knowledge, skills and confidence to deliver the best quality care to older Australians. So it's a very different approach to how organizational learning typically happens across the country. Not only did Anglicare SA were they successful in winning this award, they also outcompeted a whole lot of organizations in the Australian Institute of Training and Development Awards for best use of technology for learning. And that wasn't just aged care sector, that was corporate Australia. What the experience was like for frontline care or personal care worker at Anglicare SA was every day while they were at work, they would get prompted with 5 minutes of learning. And the design approach that Anglicare SA took was very cognizant of things like how do we make this accessible and as inclusive as possible. So we used a thing called the Gunning-Fogg Index. That's a measure of readability. So we actually, when we were designing with the frontline carers and subject matter experts from Anglicare SA, we focused on writing in simple plain English and using audio, video, animation as much as we could to make it a multimodal learning experience. What actually happened each day was you got to interact with a scenario, and that was usually a resident scenario. And you either watched a video, you listened to a piece of audio, and it asks you to, what would you do in this situation to, make the customer feel safe and demonstrate the dignity and respect that older Australians deserve. So when you submitted your answers, you got feedback straight away. And this feedback uses a thing, what we call motivational banter. And the idea of the banter is to keep you engaged in the learning experience. So when I got it correct, the app responded and gave me feedback and a little bit of stretch learning. It might have said, here's a great article you can read on dementia care. When I got it incorrect, it looked to close my knowledge gap. And what happened on each of my attempts, because I didn't just interact with one dementia care scenario on agitation, I interacted with 2 or 3 different scenarios. So what that was able to let me do as a personal care worker was demonstrate I could apply my knowledge in lots of different contexts or situations where an older Australian might become agitated because of their dementia. And like I said, the app responded and personalized the experience depending on whether I'm someone that's highly competent and proficient in dementia care, or I'm learning how to be the best possible care in that context, and it responded well to that. What the banter did was also it told people, look, you're on track, you're on fire with this one. This is the second time in a row you've got it right, and you've only one more attempt now, and you'll master this question or this topic on agitation. So that was a really nice way to keep people motivated and engaged. And it ties into a whole lot of research from Stanford University about how can we use motivational theory, how can we use behavioral economics to really engage people with this sort of learning. And as Lil said, people loved the experience of 5 minutes a day. Feedback from the evaluation that Anglicare SA ran was that actually they think they could use it for nearly any clinical scenario. What differentiates the approach though from an e-learning module, which we say is a once and done approach. So it's in June each year, we roll out a dementia care online learning module, and someone sits for 30 minutes. So that's a once and done approach. What the micro-learning spaced repetition approach does, it says, we're going to give you lots of practice opportunities to demonstrate that you actually have mastery in this knowledge domain like dementia. So in effect, it uses a model called the spacing and testing effect. And this approach says, when you get something right, like you see there on screen, increase the amount of time before I see that scenario again on delusions. And if I get it wrong, shrink the amount of time. And only deem me someone as competent when I've mastered in 3 or 4 consecutive correct attempts, and that might be over the space of a month. So you have to take your hat off to the personal care workers at Anglicare SA, because they didn't just interact with this for 5 minutes a few days. Some of them interacted it for 4 to 6 weeks to get to knowledge mastery. And when they did master the content, it stayed resident on their mobile phone, and they could at any time refer back to that content if they wanted to refresh their knowledge by just clicking on one of those arrows. So they mastered content in each of those topics that you see there on screen. That's it from me.
Great. Thanks, James. Thank you very much. We'll pass over to Emma Allen and Danny Turner, who will be presenting with respect to Simple. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So thank you, James and Will. That was really interesting. So what I'd like to do today is just tell you a little bit about Simple. Simple is an industry-specific food safety management and consumer meal ordering software. It was developed by industry experts to provide an easy and effective solution for the aged care sector to achieve food safety compliance and also support consumer choice while managing complex dietary needs. There's really 2 key areas of the software and what we set out to achieve for the industry. But what we're going to do today is really just focus on the consumer meal ordering system, because this is making such a big difference in the industry. It's driving consumer choice, it's streamlining our processes and also reducing the risk as well of incorrect meals being provided to residents. So Danny Turner is with us today. Danny has actually been one of our clients for a period of time, and we thought it would be a great opportunity to be able to share with you his experience of going digital, because I know in the industry there is a lot of thought towards paperless systems and how can we improve our service for our residents as well. So welcome, Danny, and thank you so much for joining us. Danny, I thought probably the first thing that we could do is really maybe just touch base on a little bit about your facilities and also your food service approach.
Yeah, so Harbison is a 2-site home. It's community owned. We have up to 280 residents in our homes and up to 300 staff. And food service, I started in Harbison in 2020. You mentioned paper. That was the fear of when I arrived, that it would be the system. So our food was a little bit messy at the initial stages when I arrived, but when we implemented Simple Foods, it was so easy to look how we could cook fresh. And food is not just something to put in front of someone. Food is something to feed our souls and nutrition, our body, re-enablement. It's so important to how we can actually care for somebody. So our approach at Harbison is cooking fresh and cooking real food, employing qualified staff, and you need a system to support that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess you've answered probably the next question, why you felt it was important to move across to a digital system. What challenges did you have in your facility that you thought a paperless system could help you with?
Well, choice. When I arrived, it was a bit, you couldn't really prove what you were doing. And that was a key risk for us. And you did mention the food service side is important, but the safety side was also very important for this system to be chosen for us as well. So when a resident, obviously we need to understand what they would like to eat. When you have paper, it's redundant as soon as that paper's gone in the bin. So you've really got no history for a resident's choice, what they would like to eat and what you've actually done for that resident for the last 30 services. So being able to retrieve that data is very invaluable, especially when you're trying to analyze their nutritional needs and what they need going forward.
Absolutely. And you have an API connection, don't you, with your clinical care software? So
That's
Simple and your clinical. So what does that mean? What improvements does that mean for the kitchen and communication?
Well, that's a huge one. And I think anyone that wants to ask a question on this one should be that if you've got a whiteboard in your kitchen, you need to really think about this system because, having whiteboards, again, for, texturized diets or thickened fluids is quite risky because, again, it can be quite outdated. So the API key into our clinical system, which is PCS, means that if our nutritionist, our speech pathologist, our doctor or RNs make a change for a resident, that transcribes into PCS immediate. So for the next service, you've got up-to-date information for that resident's needs. So there's just no risk, which is very important for us.
Absolutely. So I guess for our listeners, it's probably important to point out that Simple has the API connection with most of the leading care software, aged care software, and the updates actually occur every 10 minutes. So if there is a dietary change, that information is communicated to the kitchen immediately. So the system was really developed at looking at the challenges in the industry of where we say, okay, well, we have this paper trail, paper communication where an update is made, the clinical care team print off that piece of paperwork and walk it to the kitchen. And we do know through audits and compliance and so on that this doesn't always happen. So having those updates occurring all the time just streamlines the process and does make it safe. So what about during COVID and lockdowns? Did the system help limit movement through the facility, or what did it give you any benefits?
It definitely gave us some benefits and where we could use it possible because lockdowns were pretty difficult for everyone and probably everyone had their own unique experience. But again, being able to rely on the system history when we couldn't get to a resident was also very valuable for us to be able to provide food to that resident that we couldn't quite get access to. But we could definitely rely on information which could just go straight into Simple Foods and take that resident's choice. Because again, when you do have someone confined to their room, unfortunately, food becomes a very big focus because they've not got very much to look forward to. So that was quite important to get right, which I think Simple did obviously help us do that.
Yep, which is fantastic. So it'll help you in the future as well if you have any type of influenza or gastro as well.
Oh, absolutely.
So, just listening to what Lil said before too about tech savvy staff, perhaps maybe being a little bit nervous about going digital. Was that a concern for you when you were considering the transition to digital?
I think change, no one likes change, right? So we can call that out.
Yeah.
But, and essentially, no one wanted to get rid of paper. Everyone trusted paper. It was just, again, you're trying to change something it's been in the industry for the last 50 years. So it was difficult to think about it, but I think when you actually explain and you provide a very structured education, to the team. And I think the way that Simple offered one-on-one training for every staff member was crucially important, because you couldn't do that in a group session. Everyone needed to understand what part of the system they were accountable for, whether it was the food safety side or the food ordering side. And there's too much important information to miss. So the one-on-one training was obviously a big success. And the people that I have actually seen never use a phone can now run around the facility using tablets, and has actually helped us with other systems that they're actually having to use in their day-to-day jobs.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's really good. So I guess the only point would be, there potentially could be downsides as well, considering a digital system. Or what advice, I guess, would you give other providers that are considering moving away from their current paper processes?
There's definitely no downsides. I can't sit here and tell you that. I looked at many systems before we chose Simple Foods, and the reason we went with this system was because it offers everything. The advice I would give is don't wait. Whether you're looking to improve your compliance, how you're providing choice to your residents, it's just, the advice is do not wait to make a change. The system is very valuable to us, and it's not something we're looking to change at any time.
Yep. That's great. Thank you, Danny, for your time. I suppose I'll just wrap up a little bit really about the background of the system. It was really created to address unique challenges in the industry. And it came from people who've worked in the industry for a long period of time as well. Consumer choice has been a huge drive, but also supporting the workforce too. We know that workforce challenges are a real big thing at the moment, and they have been in the past as well, and probably moving forward into the future. But looking at systems that can provide cost savings, that can streamline processes, and support your team. And it's interesting because we actually also get feedback from the industry as well, is bringing new staff in and retaining them. Having digital systems, having more modern solutions for them actually helps them to attract younger staff and helps them to retain staff as well. So there's a huge amount of benefits with digital compliance and digital meal ordering. So that's it for us. Danny, thank you so much for your time and sharing your experiences with everybody on the webinar. And I'll hand it back to Sean.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Danny and Emma. That was terrific. And in fact, thanks to all of our presenters, and in particular, the presenters from the aged care providers. It's, you've all got very busy lives and busy schedules with your businesses, and to take time out and share, what's really going on in how these solutions are being used is appreciated. It really is. So the Q&A is now open. So and we've got quite a few questions that have been asked, including those that were asked when people registered. So I might start with, in fact, there's one question that's just been asked now, and it's for Lil. So Lil, you made a comment about staff helping to design the learning. What did you mean by that?
Okay, so when the content that goes onto the Dementia Care app, we got our clinical manager, actually two of them involved. And so we ran through with them. We had my learning and development business partner and a couple of clinical managers, as well as Obvious Choice, and we all got together with the content. So the content to us was really important, that it was real and it was matters that happen on our aged care sites. So to have two people that actually work it and know what people are going through at site was really important to us. And it was, I think it was also something that really got it over the line with our general manager as well, knowing that we were doing the content, not necessarily Obvious Choice.
Okay, great. A question for you, so Emma and Danny, actually, and you might have already answered this to a certain extent. Does the software make it easier to submit for the quarterly basic daily supplement, which is the $10 supplement?
Okay, so the design of the software actually occurred before this supplement reporting requirement came through. There's no unique features which have been designed for this. However, you can quantify the meal orders that are being processed and what's popular. So you can actually really identify that it's tangible of orders have been created for your residents, which then can assist with your reporting. We're an Australian-based company, and our developers are actually in-house developers as well, which makes us quite unique to other software companies. We have had a number of clients request this, and it is a feature that we are going to look into more for our clients as well. And what this means is when we create these updates and these new features for our clients, everybody gets to experience that and benefit from it. So it's definitely something which is on our radar moving forward.
Great, thank you. And for James, I've got a question here about micro learning versus e-learning. What's the difference? Sorry, James, just your microphone needs to be, yep, you got it there now. Thank you.
I think it's really important to just explain what micro-learning is first. So it's the idea that we can deliver learning in 5-minute grabs. And the approach for me is different from an end user perspective, because I think it's much more convenient and accessible and can fit into a day's work. Whereas if we have to enroll people in 30, 45 minute, 60-minute e-learning modules, that takes a lot of time away from work, and having to backfill those staff with other either agency staff or other team members. I think most people are familiar with e-learning after the pandemic and being asked by, the Department of Health or state health departments to complete online learning modules, but it's typically a 30-minute experience or more.
Okay, thanks, James. There's a question here, probably for you, Danny. Or in fact, Emma could probably answer it as well, but it might be best if Danny has a stab at it first. What are the cost savings, or have you experienced cost savings after implementing the software?
Oh, yes. The cost savings, whether it's direct or indirect, the things that you can measure or the things that you can't, you will save money. Because obviously not just going with a system where you're giving residents a lot of everything to cover choice, you're actually taking their order. So you're only giving them what they want. And when a resident has that choice, they actually are more realistic about what they can eat. So your direct food service cost will reduce, and you can certainly measure that if they're not. But the indirect costs, I think, where Simple Foods come in is actually in your compliance side. If you're consistently failing audits because you're on a paper-based system and you can't provide that evidence, the cost of getting re-audited by the Food Authority or a third-party auditor is very expensive. So it certainly does save cost.
Okay. I mean, while we've got you there, there's another question that's here, which is probably specific to your area as well. Does the software link up to existing software systems? I think you mentioned an API, Emma. I mean, can you maybe elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, that's correct. So we do have an API connection with 9 out of 10 of the leading aged care clinical care software. We also do hospital software as well, patient administration. So the API connection is a direct connection between Simple and the clinical care software. The information is only communicated one way. So the information, I guess in a simple terms, is your clinical care software is always a single source of truth, and it's moving the information across the Simple about the resident's dietary requirements. So when you have a new resident which is brought into the facility, or if you have dietary changes, once they're changed in the clinical care software, this information will be communicated across the Simple within 10 minutes of that change. And those 10-minute updates occur every 10 minutes. So simply what it means is that you don't have that paper communication from one area of the facility to another and that risk of errors occurring. On the app interface, the team can actually then see those changes and those dietary updates as well. And really, it's pretty much in real time with that 10-minute communication between the two systems. For sites that choose not to have an API connection, we also have the CSV upload feature, which is available to all of our clients, where you can actually draw a report down from your clinical care software and you can upload that into Simple instantly as well.
Okay, thanks very much. There's a question here probably for Lil. It might be best if you answer this. somebody said that most of their staff are quite a little bit older and not digitally savvy. How did you get people on board with the training app?
Did you say visually savvy?
Sorry, digitally savvy. So they're not.
Digitally, I was going to say.
savvy.
Yeah, look, we spent a lot of time out on site. We knew when we took on this app that was going to be our biggest challenge, because there's a lot of people, as you said, that are aging within, working in the aged care space, and they're scared of technology. So we made it as simple as possible. We had to-do manuals. I sent my learning and development business partners out to sites to talk through with people how to use it. I've got to tell you, the app is really simple, and I think people, it was more so the conceived idea of doing something on their phone that scared them, not when they actually did it, because it is very easy to use. But yes, we definitely made sure that we spent time with people face to face, because we knew it was going to be a challenge as soon as we knew we wanted to do this app.
If I can just add to that as well, Sean, I think what Anglicare SA did, and we don't always see this as a learning design partner with client organizations. They took on the mindset of marketers. They actually really got out there and marketed the app to the end users and sold the benefits of use to them. And once people got over that initial hurdle of downloading the app and answering their first questions, they were off and going.
Okay, great, thank you. There's a question here that's probably best for Joash. It's a broader question. It's sort of, they've asked, with these solutions, how would you approach embedding these as part of a broader digital strategy? Do you want to maybe have a crack at answering that, Joash?
Yeah, I think kind of maybe going back to the question too that Emma, you answered about the API. I think something that's really important to consider for a digital strategy, one is how, I guess I'd start with a single source of truth from a data perspective. So single view of a customer, perhaps rather. So what makes up a customer? What is the definition, the data sort of based definition of what a customer is? And then how is all of that data collected into one place? And then how is that visualized? Like, what are the end user and the end apps that are used to consume that? So I think a key part of that, relevant to this discussion, is how applications are integrated with each other. So Simple Foods, for example, to a clinical care system, there's an API layer, which is great. It means that data can flow backwards and forwards. Something that we come across with providers that are looking to implement a digital strategy or digital enablement across their organization is they'll have sort of point-to-point integrations. They'll have an integration that's between, say, Simple Foods and clinical care. They may have an integration between HR, their HR and learning management system, and an e-learning module. For example, they might have an integration between payroll and rostering, for example. And there's actually, and all of that enables, digital orchestration and a digital interface with customers. But there actually can build up quite a lot of technical debt in all of those point-to-point integrations. So I think the key thing for providers to consider is where is the one spot? What is the one consistent way of building those integrations between systems to allow that to be easily maintained and updated as systems update and progress? That kind of, the bit that you can't see, how things all work behind the scenes, I think we can pay a lot more attention to that, so that the digital bit that sits on top of that is much easier to implement when we want to do that piece. I don't know if I've answered your question, Sean, but
yeah, okay, no, thank you. That was one of the questions that came through. That's kind of probably not a bad place to finish, everybody. We sort of allocate around 40-45 minutes for these sessions, and looking at my timer, we're about there now. Today's session, as I said at the very beginning, it was the first one that we've done. Not just because we had our clients alongside suppliers, but this is the first session we'll be putting on Inside Aging as a video recording. So for everybody that's on the call, thank you for joining us, and you'll be able to go back and view today's session as a video on Inside Aging. So we'll have that later today, and everybody will get an email link to have a look at that. If you'd like to share it within your organisation, please do. That's what these sessions are really all about. It's helping share some of the insight around the award entries and ultimate winners, so that others can maybe learn from them. For our presenters, thanks again for joining us. It's really appreciated. And we look forward to seeing you perhaps again at some point. Any final comments from any of the presenters just before we wrap up?
I'd just like to thank everybody for their time, and also for you, Sean, as well, for inviting us to this session. Thank you.
No, our pleasure. No, thank you very much to everybody. So we'll close off now, and those people on the call will receive an email from Inside Aging later with a recording for the session. And yeah, thanks again.
Thanks, Sean.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.